Hello again, and welcome to another episode of BitNote. This is David Collins, and we'll be playing video game and video game music. Hope you enjoy. Hey again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of BitNote. So, last show we were talking about Murdered Soul Suspect, a fairly recently released game by Airtight Games, which has since gone bankrupt, about trying to solve the case of the serial killer who has killed you at the start of the game. It got me saying about how a surprising number of games, started with the protagonist dying, and one of those games was The World Ends With You. In a similar case, you suddenly find yourself in a confusing place, later realize you died, and are desperately competing in this underworld sort of tournament with a partner, and the objective is that if you win the tournament, you get back your life. So that's exactly what you're gunning for. But when I was thinking about the game, I realized, there's actually a lot of good music for The World Ends With You. Last time I mentioned the game, I played a song called Calling, and that was really, really good. But just as I was talking about the game last week, I thought, wait, there's another track that I really liked from that game. And indeed, kind of through the week, snatches of that song have been playing through my mind since. So, what I present to you right now is called Déjà Vu. It was composed by Takeharu Ishimoto, who did pretty much all of the music for this game, and it includes vocals by Joanna Koike. Of course, it is from The World Ends With You, which is by Square Enix and Jupiter. So, without further ado, allow me to play Déjà Vu.
Where did we meet before? Just like this. I know your smile, your voice, just like that. You talk to me and
And of course, that was from The World Ends With You. It was released on the Nintendo DS and also recently released on the iOS platforms such as the iPad and iPhone. So if you never really had a Nintendo DS and but still got one of those iOS things, you can play the game there. And just to cover that again, of course, the song was Déjà Vu, composed by Takeharu Ishimoto with vocals by Joanna Koike, and is from The World Ends With You, developed by Square Enix and Jupiter. So, if you've been following the last few shows, and you may have realised that there was a pattern, i.e. a pattern which I explicitly spelled out, in that I would be covering the 4 games made by Thatgamecompany, the game development studio that is literally named Thatgamecompany. They have a reputation for very arty games, and due to the fact that they had a 3-game deal with Sony, for being very much affiliated with Sony. Well, I am coming up to the last of the episodes, and I'm dealing with the last game that they've developed, and it, of course, was developed for a Sony platform, and the game itself was called Journey. So, Journey, I don't know if you've ever heard about The Hero with 1,000 Faces. It was basically a book that really analysed how a lot of heroic and modern myths have shaped various different myths. It was written by Joseph Campbell, and it's a monomyth theory that basically says how all the great legends in our plan can be basically reduced to a single formula. Now, that theory gets an incredible amount of controversy, not in the least because there are a lot of really hacky scriptwriters and storytellers out there that think that Joseph Campbell's reductionist view of all the myths and legends of history and reducing into a formula is actually a formula that they should follow when writing a myth, when it should be just a basic analysis. As anyone who knows anything about storytelling knows, there's a story composed of a lot of different components. There's not just what happens, there's how it happens, there's why it happens, there's the background it happens, there's the people involved, there's a twist, the theme, there's about a million things involved in a story. So reducing the basic plot to a set of structural events and then trying to import that set of structural events to whatever story you're writing, regardless of whether it suits the context, is just a recipe for making a hacky, thrown together sort of mess, basically. And at the very best, even if you do succeed and maybe you do get some leverage out of that, you end up getting something that kind of looks like everything else and therefore runs the risk of not exactly fitting in. Like any sort of restriction or any sort of emphasis, you can still pull this off in a very well way, but you're kind of handicapping yourself at the beginning because you're focusing more on what happens and how to structure what happens and try to engineer your story so that it happens in this way, rather than asking yourself, well, why are you writing the story? What am I trying to express? What do I want to get across? Basically, what do I want the audience to experience when they're listening to it? And that's kind of one of the great things about it. Of course, it also implies that there's only one way to tell a story, which is another problem in and of itself. But for all the movies and scriptwriters and everyone who's tried to get addicted to this kind of one way of writing a story, you know, the hero with 1,000 faces, this is pretty much one of the cases where a game development company took it and then decided, instead of just making kind of like a generic kind of like, you know, sci-fi or epic or fantasy thing with this whole thing, that they'd actually just tried a game that encapsulates the experience of the journey themselves. And that's kind of what they did. By the way, for all those who don't know what the basic gist of the Journey Hero with 1,000 Faces, I haven't actually read the book, but from what I understand, the basic thing is you've got a hero sets off at a journey. At first he refuses, but then of course he can't refuse, so he receives the call. By the way, The Matrix is like one example. So he receives it, and they are good times and they are bad times, and there's a moment where all hope seems lost, but at the end they surge back, they win victory at the end of the day, and they restore peace to the kingdom and whatever. If it sounds like every story you've ever read, well, then you can kind of see how the whole idea of this came across in the first place. But like a good developer or a good artistic creator, the people at that game company realized that you can't just like have a mechanical reproduction of the hero's journey and just expect it to work out well. So a lot of the emphasis of the game is the experience, the feeling, and, well, the journey, so to speak. And so what exactly is a journey? Well, I think I'm going to play one of my favorite tracks from it, The Road of Trials, and then I'll continue on talking a bit more about what the actual journey is as well. Just to give you a bit of knowledge, there's this soundtrack was actually nominated for a Grammy. This is actually the first video game to ever receive a Grammy nomination for Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media, and that's quite an achievement. It was composed by Austin Wintory, who also did music from Flow, from Monaco, which Flow, of course, being another game developed by Thatgamecompany, and this time it also was taking and that time it was based off research into flow theory and stuff. So as you can see, Thatgamecompany tries to broaden its field and areas and understanding when creating a game. And Austin Wintory also composed music for Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded, which was a gigantic difference in composing stuff. Also, interestingly, he also composed music for Soul Fjord, which was developed by Airtight Games, who I've just said composed Murdered Soul, who made Murdered Soul Suspect and have since gone bankrupt. So it's kind of funny that both games that I'm playing music from this show also have a connection to Airtight Games and Murdered Soul Suspect. But I'll leave you there. I'll leave you with that digression right now. I'll play The Road of Trials, as I said, Austin Wintory from the video game Journey by Thatgamecompany, and then I'll talk a bit more about what the actual real substance and feeling of the game is, and trust me, that's kind of its strongest feature. Have a listen. that was The Road of Trials. It was composed by Austin Wintory from the video game Journey by Thatgamecompany. So, what exactly is special about Journey? Well, that's what I was wondering when I first started playing the game. So you start the game, and you suddenly find yourself as a hooded, robed figure in a great big yellow desert. Now really, it feels very strongly here. They put a lot of effort into just the stark red against the great yellow sands, the way that as you move about, the sand seems to push under you, and in the distance you can see this mountain with this small crevice and a great light shining out of it, and you know, without even any story or exposition or anything else, that you're meant to head for it. And also because the first rule of video game thing is, if it looks interesting, head towards it. So you head towards it, and you suddenly gradually sort of get to grips with it. You can jump, you can move around, and you can also send off this weird signal. And at various parts you see these kind of strange red flags on the ground, and when you do a little bit this, it all turns white and it folds around you and stuff. And soon you can later that you realise that you've got a scarf, and that the longer the scarf is, the more you can sort of float or glide or fly through the air. And it's sort of getting pretty interesting because, you know, you're this figure, you're making way through a desert landscape and you can float. And then gradually, as you work through more and more desert, you start to see more and more ruins about you. You know, gigantic bridges that are crushed, big amphitheaters that are now small, that are now like covered in sand and that are buried and have got small entrances. And of course, in true video game fashion, you find ways to resurrect ancient artifacts and get them to perform their original purpose, showing that sometimes you don't need a warranty when dealing with ancient tech because they last so damn long. But as you're going along, you realise that you're, interestingly, not alone. There's another robed and scarfed figure just like you, and he's also seems to be on the same sort of quest. And you go up to him, and then he seems to be emitting these bright signals, and you try to communicate back, but all you can do is get signals going as well. And you're not quite sure what's going on, and gradually you realise, wait a sec, it can't be, this character can't be controlled by the computer. I mean, his movements are way too erratic. He's not easily doing a given program. He's kind of jumping around in certain ways that an AI program just wouldn't do. And you realise that he's another human being. Somewhere on this great planet is someone else playing the same game, trying to get through the same levels as you are, and the great server in the sky, or in the cloud, so to speak, great pun, has decided to hook your two games together, and you basically are on this journey together. And so basically this is great, except you can't speak with each other, you can't like type out anything, you can't use voice chat. All you can do is emit this signal. So you emit some signals and he emits them, and depending on who or what they are, you might work out some vague system for working together. But either way, you work on through, and sometimes you go separate and each do kind of your own thing, and sometimes you join together, and sometimes one of you shows the way, you go forward and the other one follows you, or maybe they show the way and you follow them. And it's kind of beautiful, and you're basically work through this great desert scape and into more tough ruins, and it kind of says something about Journey, about how, you know, no matter what the journey, no one's in it alone. So essentially you keep going on, and you go through bright times. You manage to get flashbacks to these cutscenes that show when the civilization flourished, and then what happened, about how there was a rise and how there was a whole fall, and basically you kind of get the search as you go along. And after some time, unfortunately, things get a little dicey. You end up going through this kind of like sand avalanche. You see a great view of the city, and then you fall into a very darkened area where these strange machines lurk, and you basically have to dive and duck and cover and try to do a bit of stealth, which usually is bad in a video game, but anyway, to try to make it from one place to the other and not get caught by these terrible machines, which I personally completely failed at and got caught repeatedly by the machines. And each time they do, they rip your scarf in half so you can't glide as much, so it's really annoying. But finally you make it to you're trying to make it near to the end, and things get tough. I can't really spoil much for you. Sometimes it gets harsh, sometimes it gets terrible, but you keep trying to push through, and when you finally reach the end, there's a bit of exuberance and a strange feeling about it. But I don't really want to spoil it, so I don't want to give away too much of the ending. Although given the fact that I've explained this is the hero's story, and the hero's journey has a very defined pattern, that the problem with the hero's journey has always become too much a defined pattern. So technically, I'm not sure I can spoil the story, unless or if I have spoiled can spoil the story that I already have, but in any event, let's just say it's a nice experience to go through. The whole game is actually relatively short, one of its targets of criticism. Honestly, I kind of like that. I don't like games that are unnecessarily extended. For some reason, Far Cry keeps coming to mind as a game that was a little too badly extended, because for a lot of the time there was strategic shooting in that game, and then there was this one level involving a lab and all these mutants that was just so generic. But the point is, it's not so much about length, it's much about what sort of experience you want to convey and what's the best way to do that. And running time, just like in films, is one of those important attributes. So in the end, it was a little short, but I liked it. It was an experience, it was fun, and of course it makes it easy to repeat the game, and this time you can help give guidance to others as you do. And that's a pretty fun thing to do. I'm going to leave you with I Was Born with this. I was going to try to throw you with Apotheosis, which some consider to be the best track of the game, but unfortunately I don't think we've run a lot of time. Apotheosis runs over 7 minutes long, and I was kind of playing a lot of other long tracks, so I'll just leave you with I Was Born with this. It was vocals by Lisbeth Scott, as I said, was composed by Austin Wintory, and yes, it finished off the game. So just like it finished off the game, I'll use this track to finish off the show. So this has been David Collins with BitNote, playing great video game music and tracks that I hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening.